The information shared in this episode is not intended to serve as a substitute for mental health services and is only intended to provide education and information to you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Honeybee Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing information about the concept and practice of mindfulness. The reasoning for my wanting to share this concept and the information about the practice of mindfulness is to allow you, the listener, to consider the pros and cons of adding this to your life. Let me first define mindfulness. I like to describe mindfulness as the practice of paying attention with intention to the present moment. Another definition that I would like to share with you comes from mindful.org. Mindfulness is described as the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we are doing, while not overly being reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. I find there to be a tremendous value to paying attention on purpose with intention to what is going on within us and around us. The whole process of me becoming willing to do mindfulness and practicing mindfulness is due to my intention and wanting to be a therapist who specialized in dialectical behavior therapy. A part of providing dialectical behavior therapy, aka DBT, is practicing mindfulness. The idea behind that is if we are asking, as the therapist, asking our clients to do something, then we very well must do it ourselves. So we know what it's like when we come up against roadblocks, so we can help them with fine-tuning and problem solving when those things happen, as well as it helps us kind of step out of that ivory tower of do as I say, not as I do. So in practicing mindfulness, I really began to appreciate noticing these subtle changes in my body when I would feel an emotion. Prior to me practicing mindfulness, of course, I would notice if I had been happy or sad or content or disappointed or angry. I would notice my emotions. What I wouldn't notice would be the intensity of my emotions until it reached like a certain peak, okay? And so with mindfulness, I am able to notice the intensity of my feeling, the thought that I'm having that is ramping up that emotion and the intensity, as well as the physiological changes that are happening in my body. Prior to me practicing mindfulness, I didn't notice when I would be angry or frustrated how my shoulders would begin to go towards my ears and I would have like facial constriction, like my jaw would get tight, my heart would race a little bit, and just kind of like my face would be screwed up, right? So in knowing what I know about the body and the mind and thoughts influencing our emotions and how our emotions influences the reactions that we have in our body, muscle constrictions, muscle relaxation, and the like, I was able to gain power over changing my emotions, changing how strong my body felt about whatever my experience was, and also having this buffer between my emotions and the moment that I had been in order to make a wise and effective choice in that moment. Emotions communicate and they motivate. Emotions are powerful. And when we are experiencing big emotions, amplified emotions, or what have you, because something's frustrating or really great, we tend to have more of a likelihood in making choices that we would not have otherwise made if we were more calm and regulated. So mindfulness provides me with that bird's eye view over my emotions, my thoughts, and what my body is doing about that stuff, as well as the situation that I'm in. Furthermore, in me noticing and knowing that my shoulders are going towards my ears, my face is screwed up, my heart is racing, things like that, I'm mindful of it. I know that it's happening. So then I'm able to do what's called opposite action. So I'm going to take a few mindful breaths, practice moving my shoulders down away from my ears, changing my facial expression just to take the edge off. This sort of approach, in my opinion, is helpful for anyone who is wanting to alleviate some sort of unpleasant experience in that moment so they can make a more effective choice than they would have if they got totally lost in their emotion. So, aside from that particular benefit, I am going to share the why behind the why, one of my favorite things to do. Why consider practicing mindfulness? When we practice mindfulness, paying attention on purpose to the present moment, what's going on internally and around us, the process of doing this over time will allow the brain to create new pathways. The brain's hard wiring changes. So the things that would make us reactive in the past and quite a bit, or make us very emotional and quite a bit, or very stressed out and quite a bit, with the practice of mindfulness, falling into the breath, progressively relaxing your muscles, going for a walk, exercising, being intentional about petting your animal, all sorts of things will give the brain practice at not reacting so sensitively, so quickly, and so intensely over time. Paying attention on purpose over time will allow for top-down control of the brain. So the cortex is our cause and effect thinking, abstract reasoning, and all that. I will not totally nerd out on you all. I'll let you do your own research. Having top-down control of the brain helps one with being able to remain calm, stay regulated, so they can really weigh the pros and cons of their reaction in a situation. It makes that thinking part of the brain stronger and more easily accessible when we practice mindfulness frequently. Aside from mindfulness helping us notice when our emotions are really big, which can then lead us to making ineffective choices, mindfulness also helps those of us who are more likely to get stuck in thinking only about the facts and only about the situation and not noticing the emotions that are involved in the matter. I don't want to give the impression that emotional experiencing or being someone who has big emotions or the like is a negative thing. I don't think that's a negative thing whatsoever. Nor do I want to give the impression that more logical people are ineffective. What I offer to you is the practice of both and noticing the facts and the emotion. For those of us who tend to be more logical and more factual, thereby ignoring the emotions that could be associated with the situation, there can be a likelihood of engaging in behaviors that are not socially appropriate, not as compassionate as we would like, not as attuned to others as we would like. And if we're focusing solely on ourselves, if we stay in the facts and not notice our emotions about the situation, there will be a time where one more thing happens in life and then we have this huge emotional overwhelm, and it would make our quality of life quite unpleasant and create difficulty in our ability to be skillful. The practice and the hope is to find balance, and that is a lifelong journey. Here is another helpful reason to practice mindfulness as frequently as possible. The brain has a tendency to dissociate, AKA check out. Everybody's brain does this. That is the way that our brain recalibrates itself. You might be driving and briefly you start thinking about something that happened earlier in the day or later on that day that could happen. I'm sure during this podcast episode, you checked out for a little bit. That's totally cool. That's what your brain is supposed to do. How is mindfulness helpful with that? We have more awareness of when we have checked out of a situation. Again, it's totally normal to be interacting with someone and then your mind drifts off. Have you ever noticed, though, that your mind has drifted off so much that the person who had been speaking with you, that you don't know anything about what they said? So then you kind of have to play it off like you were paying attention, but they know that you weren't paying attention. And then it's like weird energy at that point. So when you practice mindfulness, you notice when you have drifted off and you can gently pull your attention back to the present moment so you can remain engaged in the present. And just for clarification, some of us like to sit and focus on our breath and do that for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Some people can even do that for an hour. Others like to go outside and go for a walk, and their intention is to notice the birds chirping, or their intention may be to notice how many red cars are driving on the road at any given time. It's just simply focusing on one thing in the moment of your choice, whether that's your breath or things around you that you notice, so long as it is not too emotionally triggering or causing you to become anxious or any other emotion that you are wanting to change, go for it. And if you are in need of ideas of ways to practice mindfulness, there's all sorts of information on the internet. And if you contact me, I'm happy to send you a few ideas. If you are not entirely sold on the ways that mindfulness could be helpful for you, I would like to share 6 ideas given to us from Jill Rathis and Alec Miller, who have completed a lot of work on dialectical behavior therapy, ways to manage emotions, ways to pay attention on purpose, all sorts of very helpful things. So mindfulness, why bother with it? There's 6 reasons. The first one is that it gives you more choices and more control over your behavior. You will gain the ability to slow down and notice your feelings, your thoughts, and urges that come along with those things. Mindfulness also helps you choose a behavior more thoughtfully rather than to act more impulsively, which could make the situation worse. The second reason that mindfulness could be helpful to you is because it would reduce emotional suffering and increase your pleasure and sense of well-being. Third reason, frequently practicing mindfulness will give you more space and ability to make important decisions while balancing big emotions or being super stuck in the facts. The fourth reason that mindfulness could be helpful to you is because it will allow you to better focus your attention on things that you want to focus on instead of your mind controlling you. Therefore, you'll be able to make more effective and productive choices. The fifth reason is because it will increase your compassion for yourself and for others. It is true, it will do that. Practice it and find out. The last reason number 6, your pain will lessen, tension will be reduced, and stress will be easier to dissipate. In turn, will even improve your health. And so before I end today's episode, I invite you as practice work to weigh the pros and cons of adding some form of mindfulness to your daily routine. The biggest thing to be mindful of is to practice, practice, practice without judgment, of course. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Honeybee Podcast. Please go to my website, myhoneybeetherapy.com, to find out what I've been up to, as well as ways to get in touch with me. I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to email me, leave a comment on my website. So long as the communication is kind and respectful, I'm here for it. Again, tons of appreciation to you, the listener, for tuning in to today's episode. Until next time, peace.